Myth of King Midas and his golden touch.
With his harebrained schemes and asinine dealings with the gods, King Midas ruled the ancient kingdom of Phrygia with an uneven hand. He was known in Greek mythology as a rogue ruler whose antics bemused his people and distracted the gods.
Okay, so I do know the story of King Midas. I know what the entire thing is, but I'm watching this video just so I can get like a little more in depth because all I really know is that he wished to have power to touch gold and that was it, right? I don't know anything else about it, so that's like kind of why I'm watching this. I'm more curious about the actual folk tale or folklore of it all.
Midas spent his days in a stupor of splendor, spoiling himself and his beloved daughter, and gorging himself on feasts and wine. Unsurprisingly, he felt an affinity with Dionysus, god of wine, carnival, and performance.
Mm, so that's why. Okay, I never knew that. I never knew why he liked Dionysus so much.
One day, Midas discovered a satyr, dozing in his rose garden and drunk on more than the scent of flowers. Midas recognized the satyr as one of Dionysus's followers and let him nurse his hangover at the palace. Pleased with the king's hospitality, Dionysus offered to grant him one wish. Midas cast a greedy eye over his surroundings. Despite the luxury in which he lived, no amount of precious jewels, finest silk, or splendid decor felt like enough. His life, he thought, was lacking luster. What he needed was more gold. The god sent the power to turn anything the king touched to gold, surging through Midas. Ecstatic, he turned to his possessions. At his lightest touch, the palace walls transformed. Stone statues shone, and goblets glittered.
This is so obviously stupid. Like what like I did a little bit more research. Apparently it was just his fingers, right? So like legitimately he could just wear gloves and he'd be all right. Was really just wear gloves and he would have been fine. But he was just so greedy that he was like everything to gold. I never thought what was his plan. Once everything's to gold, now what? What do you do after that? You're gonna sell them? Pointless. It's the stupidest thing ever.
He galloped through his home in a frenzy, handling each item until it took on a lustrous sheen. Soon the palace heaved with gold, and Midas's
Yeah.
delirious laughter echoed off the walls. Exhausted and hungry,
This is like a blessing of a curse. Like it's a blessed thing to be given or bestowed something by a god, but it's also a curse in the aspect of its working.
from his rampage, Midas picked up a bunch of grapes from his newly gilded fruit bowl.
Mhm.
But he
Yep.
nearly shattered his teeth, for the fruit had turned to metal in his mouth. When he picked up a loaf of bread, the crumbs hardened in his hand. Flinging himself onto his bed in frustration, Midas discovered his plush pillows had morphed into solid gold.
That was just his hand. I didn't know. Was it his entire body or his hand? I'm pretty sure it was just his hands.
Hearing his cries of frustration, his daughter entered the room. But when Midas reached out to her, he saw with horror that he had frozen her into a golden statue.
Mm.
Horrified at what he had done, Midas begged the gods to rid him of his power. Taking pity
Like
on
put
the
some
foolish
pants on,
king,
bro.
Dionysus told Midas to wash his hands in the river Pactolus. When Midas reached into the river, the gold drained from his fingertips.
But everything else is still gold.
Midas returned home to find his daughter alive and his
Oh,
palace back to normal, and
never
he
mind.
rejoiced. You'd think he would have learned his lesson, but just a few weeks later, Midas blundered again, insulting the music and sun god Apollo when he declared Pan a greater musician. Apollo scornfully declared that the king must have the ears of an ass to make such a misjudgment, and transformed Midas accordingly. Once again regretting his behavior, Midas kept his hairy ears hidden in public. They were seen only by his barber, who was sworn to secrecy during a very awkward grooming session. The barber stifled his laughter and fought the desire to tell someone.
I thought this ended at the golden touch thing. I didn't know it continued after, so I'm getting more information that I know.
Yet the secret consumed him. One day he walked outside the city and dug a hole in the ground. Plunging his head into the earth, the desperate barber whispered, "Midas has ass's ears." Soon after, a clump
Donkey
of
ears,
reeds
okay.
sprang up in the spot where the barber had buried his words. When the wind blew, they carried the echoes of his whisper through the breeze. Midas has ass's ears. At the sound, donkeys in the fields raised their heads in recognition, and people chuckled to themselves at the follies of their king. With his golden touch and ass's ears, Midas was not the most respected ruler. And where other leaders were honored through statues and temples, his people remembered him a little differently. In the depths of the glittering river and the rustle of the Phrygian wind.
I'm pretty sure I thought that King Midas just killed his daughter and that was the end of it. I legit thought that was the end for his story. So I got a little bit more insight that he started insulting God and shit. But yeah, that was very informative. I know more about King Midas now. I thought it was just his hands that turned everything to gold. Apparently, it was his entire body.